Hello, people! Yes, it's time to look at some more pirated Famicom goodness. And I do say goodness because today's multi-cart, because I look at way too many of them, is actually quite good. So this is the Magic Game 1, brought to us by some Korean blokes. No, I have no idea who made it. If it says the manufacturer name, it's in Korean, so I really can't tell you, because I can't read Korean, as you could probably guess. But yes, anyway, well, you could probably guess what the games are just by the screenshots. In fact, if you're familiar with the NES or retro gaming in general, you should recognise most, if not all, of these screenshots because the games are quite well known. And they were all released in North America, so there's no Japanese exclusives or anything like that. In fact, most of them, I believe, are the North American releases, which is quite interesting. But when we switch this thing on, when I switch on properly, yes, you'll notice you get all this text in Korean. It's probably some safety guidance stuff, but I have no idea because I can't read it. And here we go. The name is a bit of an identity crisis because it says Mega 8, but yeah. If we start Rockman 2, you'll notice, well, those who've played Rockman 2, the Japanese version, will notice that they actually took out the intro and the subtitle. I guess they figured, well, people won't be able to read the Japanese text, so there's no point having it in the game. Which makes me wonder why they didn't just use the American version. It just seems kind of weird to me. Because, I mean, most of the other games, if not all of them, are the American versions. So that seems kind of a bit of an awkward decision, in my opinion. But yeah, this is Rockman 2. I'm sure, most of you, if not all of you, will have played Rockman 2 before, or at least heard way too much about it. Now, of course, this is widely regarded as one of the best, if not the best, in the series, and I personally would agree with that. Because to me, with this game, I just feel as though it's the sort of perfect mix in terms of difficulty. It's difficult, but it's not too hard, and if you keep using the continues, you will eventually be able to beat the levels. And it's like it's like they sort of took the first game and just sort of just improved it. Is basically what they did. And there's not really much I could say about the game because chances are most of you will be familiar with Mega Man because people go about Mega Man all the time on the internet, so yeah. Not exactly an icon back in the 80s in Britain, but these days, you've probably heard of him. Well, I say him, of course I do call him Mega Man. But then again, he's technically a robot, so I think the term androgynous probably fits more. But let's not get into that, because that's kind of weird. Yeah, the video kind of screwed up here because my computer sucks. So that's why the sound's sort of desynced and stuff. But anyway, let's move on to the second game. The second game being DuckTales. Now, this game, as you might be aware, is based off a cartoon, also called DuckTales. And in fact, I actually own this game on the NES. It's literally the one NES cart I own. And I quite like this game. I also have the Game Boy version, but it's not quite as good. It's good, especially for a game that was released very early in the Game Boy's life. It was probably the best platformer alongside Super Mario Land. But even so, I still prefer the NES version. And yeah, it's a very well designed platform, and it has a couple of ideas of its own where, like in Mega Man, you can select your own, you can go for the levels in any order pretty much. And you have this sort of weird attack thing where you have to bounce on the enemies to kill them, and they implement this very well. I feel as though, in terms of the whole Disney licenses, or in fact movie licenses in general, or whatever. Well, I say movie, it was based off a TV show, but whatever. This I would say definitely stands as being one of the best, if not the best, in my opinion. They made some other ones, like Chip and Dale, which were also great, and Tailspin, which wasn't as great, but yeah. Anyway, Super Mario. Well, if you've never heard of this game, then that's just shameful, quite frankly, because everyone knows what Super Mario is. If you've never played this game, then go and do that right now, because, well, everyone else has. But then, what else can be said? There's really nothing about this game that can be said that hasn't been said already. And in fact, what I'm saying now has probably already been said about this game. By probably, I do of course mean certainly. And yeah, I didn't feel like playing very well here, so whatever. And so we now move on to Zaynak. Now Zaynak is a classic shooter, a pretty early one for the NES, released in, I think it was 1987, I believe. There were also a couple of other games that were intertwined with this in some way or another. There was the Guardian, sorry I can't pronounce it right, the Guardian Legend, which is sort of like a cross between, well, it's sort of like half shooter, but not quite as good as this, and sort of half Zelda-ish type thing, where you walk around in sort of top-down view and shoot stuff. And that game's quite good. And there's also Gunnak, which plays like this, only like you have multiple weapons. Well, actually no, you get multiple weapons in this game, but I usually just stick with the default one because it's my favourite. But yeah, that game is quite good as well. One of the best shooters on the NES alongside this, in my opinion. Feel free to disagree. But I feel as though if you don't play this game and you like shooters, classic shooters, then I feel you're missing out with this one, because to me it's a classic. Just end of story. Because it's well designed. There's, it's hard to describe. Just if you like shooters, play Zaynak. Simple as that. So now we have NBA, even though it's not an NBA game, it's Double Dribble. Now, Double Dribble is a port of an arcade game, and as you can probably guess, this is of course a basketball game. There's obviously I could really say about the game, because it's basketball. I mean, what is it to say that you can't say about basketball in general? I will say, of the basketball games I've played on the NES, this one I would say is probably the best, with the possible exception of the Kunio one, because the Kunio one it reminds me of the Nintendo World Cup game. But anyway, Jackal. Yes, now Jackal is another arcade game originally, and yeah, I do say that most of these games, if not all of them, well, I say most of them, were like the American releases, and this is definitely the case with this one, because the Japanese version came out on the Famicom disk system, and to be honest, it really wasn't. It was noticeably inferior to Jackal. It's kind of weird because like sometimes like you play the Japanese versions, like you play the Japanese version of Contra on the Famicom, and you'll notice that it's basically like the US version with like cutscenes and stuff. So it's like better, and yet on here it was like worse in Japan. But anyway, another game, another arcade port. Yes, Rainbow Islands. If you've never played this game, basically it was the sequel to Bubble Bobble, as you can probably guess from the subtitle. Yeah, you have to wait like half an hour before it lets you press start for some reason. But yes, by no means the most arcade perfect of the ports that I've seen, but it is quite good in its own right. Yes, now once again, this is the US version of the game. How do I know? Well, because it has different music. I think they had to change it for like legal issues, because, well, let's just say if you ever played the arcade version, it's pretty obvious as to why they did that. But yeah, anyway, yes. Now, in fact, I actually have another multi-cart which has the Japanese version of this, which is pretty much how I know this is the US version of the game. And they've got VOD that pirated the US version, but whatever. Yeah, music aside, it's basically the same thing. Not like it really matters. This was also released in Europe, but it was a completely different game, or a completely different port, should I say. So I think it was done by Ocean, who were infamous for making really awful movie licenses, and most of them were pretty awful in my opinion. But this one, their port was actually, I would say, an improvement on this, but this is still quite good. But it does say something about the difficulty of this version, considering they managed to collect 6 of the diamonds in the first level. But yeah, whatever. There's not really much more to say about that game, so let's end this with Arkanoid. Yes, yet another arcade port. And Arkanoid is probably the one that will be most familiar to a lot of people, unless you're British, in which case it's probably going to be the previous game. But yeah, Arkanoid, you know, it's that game where you fail really badly. Well, at least I do anyway. But yeah, this is that game where you fire a ball at blocks and you have to hit them. You know, I'm sure everyone's played this game, or at least a game that plays like it anyway. Because, you know, it's really well known. You know, it was sort of based off Breakout, but they sort of took Breakout and improved it pretty much. And by they, I do of course mean Tyler, who made it. But it's hard to play without the. I can't remember what it was. There was like a peripheral that came with this if you like got a proper copy of it. But of course I didn't because it's a Pirate Wars cart where like it was paddle controller. But yeah, that's all there is for the video footage. But yeah, overall it is quite a good collection of games. But of course the problem with it is it didn't seem to work on my Famicom. So like I had to play it on like a clone system. And yeah, that was kind of like the only real problem that I had with it. Apart from not being able to read the text, but I'm not sure if that's really a problem so much as, you know, just me not being Korean. But yeah, anyway, that's all I have to say about this. If you have a Famicom system that could run this game, or multicart, and you can find this multicart by some sort of luck, then I recommend picking it up. In fact, actually no, just before I go, there was a Magic Games 2, but the games on it weren't quite as good. I think it had like Ikari 2, which was, like I played it before and it was awful. And there was some other games I don't remember. Oh, actually no, I think there was like a Tetris clone on there, but it was kind of weird. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I should probably wrap up this video at this point. So yeah, see you later people. See you!